Welcome inside the parlor for a Holy Trinity show extra, as the revolution on the field at Villa Park continues under Monchi and Unai Emery. Off the field, there is somewhat of a revolution occurring as well, and we're only just starting, and it's not going to recede now that we know for sure that Villa Park will be hosting Euro 2028 matches. And some of the changes have not been received happily, and I've been asked for my opinion on many of the business and commercial issues that have been coming up over the last several months. So let's get into it. That's why I'm in my business attire, my Villa tie, my Villa cufflinks, Villa sweater, as we chat business here on the Holy Trinity show. Now, straight out of the gates, I want to make it clear, I do not have a university degree in business. I'm very comfortable speaking on marketing, communications, public relations, sponsorship activation even, hospitality, branding, but I'm not credentialed in any way in terms of business development, or operations management. And I'm also not privy to how much of the club's operations are run by them themselves or are run by vendors. Like, for example, they outsource their merchandising to Kitbag and Fanatics, which is why we are bombarded every single day with email marketing from the Villa store. So I don't know how many vendors they have and whether those are in the food and beverage field or even custodial, because that's an important aspect of what you experience when you go to Villa Park. Being 7,400 miles away also doesn't really qualify me as much as those who go regularly to comment on the experience at Villa Park. Although my trip last spring and the Villa Park tour, very eye-opening, and I'm going to be curious to see what changes, if any, occur when I hopefully return this coming spring. And I was very lucky to experience Aston Villa for the first time in my life from a Trinity hospitality suite owned by two fabulous gents, Tony Gibson and Chris Woods. And this was the most convenient and simple way for me, along with my wife Sandra and tour sponsor Richard Davies, to experience the match day in comfort, quite frankly, because the general ticket situation and getting tickets is extremely convoluted for me anyway. Maybe I'm the only one, but it sure seems like it's a process you have to go through. You can't just hand somebody a paper ticket anymore, and that's also part of Villa's business strategy. They want to carefully manage the resale of tickets. Our owners want Champions League football, and they have demonstrated the commitment to that cause in the way they've recruited over the last couple of seasons and by bringing in elite technical leadership. Our fans want to return to Europe's biggest stage, but in order to do that, you still need more higher quality players on higher salaries, and you cannot do that unless you offset the spending with commercial revenue. Otherwise, you're on the wrong side of the financial fair play constraints. Getting into European football like the Champions League offers a windfall, but to do that, you either have to be extremely shrewd with your recruitment, which I think we have been, or you just need to find other sources of revenue. It's a chicken and egg thing. You get into the Champions League, there's a financial windfall. To get into the Champions League, you need a financial windfall. The first phase of trying to grow revenue was to appoint somebody for that specific reason, and in May of this past year, Chris Heck was named President of Business Operations after 9 years with the Philadelphia 76ers of the NBA, and before that he held a similar post with the New York Red Bulls of Major League Soccer. And I have to tell you, Red Bull Arena was by far the best venue for media people. And they did that on purpose because they knew they had to have the media there to try and stay relevant in a very crowded and saturated New York sports market. So the media had the best seats in the house, plush chairs at midfield with tables, access to technology, even the food was outstanding. And Heck only lasted there for 2 years, partially, I think, because he saw the writing on the wall. That was going to be a really hard sell, that club. I've seen and read a lot of people question whether or not we should have installed an American in this role, because I was in England last year, and believe me, I knew firsthand, and was called American several times, that the English kind of see Americans in football as all being Ted Lasso. The good news is that Chris Heck is not being paid to understand anything about football. That's Unai Emery's job. Chris Heck is being paid to A, increase Aston Villa's awareness everywhere, also to reshape and reimagine and reposition our brand, whether you're in Birmingham or here in Vancouver, British Columbia. He's also been tasked with creating all sorts of new revenue streams. And I think most importantly, he is going to inspire internal cultural change that will impact all aspects of operations. And the hard thing for you and I is there's no table we can follow to see how he's doing, like on the field. But one small barometer could be our social audiences. It's ironic that when Chris Heck left the Philadelphia 76ers, their Twitter X followers were 2.3 million. When he arrived at Aston Villa in May, our Twitter X followers were 2.3 million. It's a small thing, but let's watch that and see if it grows. At Philadelphia, Heck literally took over a derelict, forgotten club, but one that had historic relevance and in a fantastic sports market that really revered basketball and basketball culture. And you know, the first thing he did to try and get the staff on board and helping to push the club to new heights while also trying to attract better talent into the club, he offered the staff free food every day. He figured it cost about 30 grand a year, but was worth every single penny because the staff was always there. They didn't go out for meals. They stayed together and collaborated. And if you are going to drive meaningful change from within, it's going to be because of your people. And the people that worked at the 76ers felt valued, and with the greatest of respect to the English, because football is part of the cultural fabric and heritage of your nation, which is why I loved it there so much. Nobody understands sport business, marketing, brand development, and the game day razzle-dazzle quite like the Americans. And it's ironic because here, soccer is so far behind all other North American sports precisely because we don't have that cultural intrinsic fabric part down. In Major League Soccer and the Canadian Premier League, we spend so much time on everything but the actual football, and that's because we don't have any football people running our sport. It's all people that have come from other sports. So Chris Heck is hired, and frankly, he steps into a gigantic mess. Christian Purslow divides opinion within our fan base, I've noticed. My opinion, he was a good championship CEO because he was a wonderful and eloquent orator. He could wear multiple hats that included sponsorship, promotions, sales, marketing, and football, although that was not within his skill set. Ultimately, Christian Purslow was a sales guy, and you need that in the championship. He gave Villa credibility during that time. But when you need to take that next step, the one the owners want to make, he was woefully short. And I would imagine he cost Sawiris and Edens tens of millions of dollars. And I'm impressed by them that they recognized this and that they were dead serious in finding Unai Emery's equivalent in the business side. And of course, Wes Edens would have known about Heck through his NBA connections. Christian Purslow's failings, in my opinion, came down to him being too influenced by what the fans wanted. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute. We want to be heard. We want somebody to represent and appease us. I'll get back to that in a minute. I look at some of the decisions and I wonder, did you make these decisions on behalf of your team based on social media noise? Because we grossly overpaid for Emi Buendia. Let's not talk about what kind of a player he is. Let's talk about the fee. And that would never have been paid under Monchi or Unai Emery. Same with Steven Gerrard's signing. Young, high-profile guy on his way up. Then there was the shirt sponsorship. Yes, it yielded a lot of revenue, but it came with controversy and questions of morals. We can't even wear that sponsor in certain competitions in certain countries. Then there's the kit manufacturer who had close ties to Steven Gerrard, now with a defective product that's affecting performance. Then you have the stadium redevelopment. He committed so much square footage to staff space. He wanted an outbuilding that would have sat empty except for once every 2 weeks. The logo redesign, why did that happen when it did? There was no milestone last year when it was released. And some may say that the terrace view butchered the Holt End. All of those things happened before Chris Heck even arrived. For the stadium redesign, Heck moved all the office space out of the north stand, which is obvious. Your stadium needs to generate as much revenue as possible, and that square footage with staff doesn't generate any. And instead, he added the club shop and also a new lounge that will operate 7 days a week. And then for the warehouse building where the staff will be housed, they also have a microbrew, which too will be available to generate revenue 7 days a week. We are once again redesigning the crest, only this time with a much more clear purpose, and that's to distinguish our brand from everybody else in the Premier League, everybody else in sport, and make it clear and clean and simple. We didn't need to refresh a round badge that we already own and that I have on all this retro gear that I've already bought. That makes no sense. If there's one mistake Edens and Sawiris made in these last 2 years, it's not hiring a guy like Heck much sooner. And frankly, they might not have been able to attract somebody like him until Unai Emery came along and changed things on the competition side. So with the greatest of respect to supporters of any club, 99.9% of them do not have football expertise, nor a business degree, nor a background in marketing, communications, sponsorship, sales, merchandising, shall I go on? And unfortunately in football, even though everybody has an opinion and now a place to share it on social media, the vast majority are not qualified to have an opinion. And this is one of the things that has changed football completely over the last 15 years. Our owners have appointed one of the very best technical leaders, and he's since surrounded himself with more elite technical people. Then they installed Chris Heck, and he's hired another group of people who are all elite in the field of sales, marketing, promotions, communications, merchandising, hospitality, public relations, digital growth, all of it. And they're going to need time to put their plan in place. And the biggest thing they're going to have to do is block out the noise from all the people who spend all the time complaining. The reason why you and I are being asked to shell out more for almost everything is partially because we now have a global elite world-class manager, arguably top 5 in the world. And we have better players, some of whom regulars on their national team. We finished 7th European football, and our owners want to stay there and actually improve on that and get into better competitions. And one of the problems when you inflate everything is you do change the clientele. And when you change the clientele, you change the atmosphere. I've been watching this happen in North American sports for the better part of 15 years. As the ticket gets more expensive, the building gets more quiet. It's not a coincidence that you see players all the time trying to whip up the crowd because they're not doing it on their own anymore. Those people have been priced out of the market. And believe me, they would have done a lot of research to try to come up with comparable ticket valuations, either within the Premier League or outside North America, different sports, to arrive at the prices they have now. And some of those price increases have been dramatic. I was shocked to hear that certain suites doubled in price heading into this season. No warning, you're now paying twice as much as you did last year to lease an executive suite in some parts of Villa Park. And where suite holders and general season ticket holders have a right to ask some serious questions is when the service and the quality and the general value proposition does not increase with the cost. I don't think any of us can argue that Aston Villa is a way more fun team to watch already this season, especially at Villa Park, where they've lost just once in their last 13 games. But I think there's an expectation that when you increase prices, there needs to be standard increases in quality, amenities, all of this. And I'll have some specific examples from my experience this past spring a little later. And just like Aston Villa will be looking for potential superstar employees to help activate this grand vision of theirs, Paul Hansaker of 24/7 Services is shockingly still seeking an administrative superstar, somebody with a little bit of experience in maintenance or construction and understands health and safety, because right now Paul is literally underwater because of all the rain and the emergency work he's been getting lately. So while he's dealing with that, the paperwork is piling up on poor Cheryl's desk. I mean, it's gotten so bad, Paul is actually considering possibly having to hire a Baggies fan. Please, if you or somebody you know fits that description, get in touch. I've put Paul's email address in the description of this video along with all the office numbers. Coinciding with the increase in general ticketing and the luxury or corporate hospitality suite business is the introduction to two new and rather contentious fan experience zones that are clearly designed to attract a different kind of clientele. And this is straight out of the North American sport venue playbook. You have your general ticketing, you have your luxury or corporate hospitality suite business here. There is room in between for a different type of consumer, a hedonist that is looking for a premium experience. I'm talking, of course, about the terrace view and the lower grounds. And the reason why a lot of feathers are being ruffled is because some fans feel that those were introduced at their expense, particularly those who used the Holt suite in the past. But I have to tell you, I know people who have taken in games and used those two fan experience zones, and they loved it. And they're not going back. And like I said about Chris Heck earlier, his job is to block out the noise, stick to the task, increase revenue, and wring every single dollar that he can out of Villa Park. The noise will die down. It always does. And I hate to sound cold-hearted here because I sympathize with fans that feel that they've been displaced or dislodged or priced out. I don't want to go back to a bottom third, let's just survive the Premier League mentality, or the Championship for that matter. And the club doesn't either. Now, from an optics standpoint, the fact that all these changes and price inflation are occurring during a cost of living crisis isn't great. But frankly, that's not the club's fault. They too are being inflated and have to pay more for all the same things that we do. And some people will say, well, the owners are rich, they can afford it. Nassif and Wes are not a charitable organization. They want a self-sustaining football or a profitable football club, and every dollar counts in that equation. And what I worry about is that over these next couple of years, if things don't change on the inflationary front, you're going to have supporters put in this situation. The vet comes and tells you your pet is going to need some surgery, and you have to decide, can I scrape together enough to make that happen? Or is it time to say goodbye? And sadly, a lot of people are going to be forced to say goodbye. And that is a very unfortunate reality that we're facing. With the recent confirmation of the Euros coming, the Villa Park expansion approval, and maybe most critically of all, the Whitton Station upgrades, we suddenly have this remarkable one-time catalyst, an opportunity to not only change our infrastructure, but also to change the cultural fabric of our entire football club. It's not all about facilities and amenities. It's how the club thinks and operates. And Chris Heck's cultural revolution at the 76ers makes me think that he is going to go through a very similar exercise to what Dean Smith did when he first arrived, which was to look at the three key core values of our club and then have those manifest themselves on the pitch. We are together, we are fearless, and we are prepared. Now, I think Chris Heck is going to take it one step further. He may review, replace, or refine those three virtues, but what he wants is for those behaviors to infiltrate every single aspect of Aston Villa's operations. Now, just going back to my hospitality experience in the Trinity, I believe and I certainly hope that those suite holders who have been asked to pay an awful lot more have a large say in all kinds of matters relating to their match day experience, right down to food menu items. And I'm quite confident that they will be engaged with regularly on that front. Like, for example, this is just me. I can go out and get a duck confit, fancy schmancy meal anywhere, anytime I want. I don't want it at the football. At the match, I want a beer and I want something that's hearty, delicious, satisfying, and consistent. And judging by all the clientele around me for those two games, I think they want the same. I don't think they want a pretty little plate with aioli drizzle and some kind of smoked flakes on top. I'd rather just have the world's best burger outside. Here's an idea. Galvanize the whole thing. Bring it all together. If Tony Morley ate a Caesar salad with poached salmon before every game, offer that. Morley's match day meal. Or how about this? The Orion Nyland match saver. It's Norwegian smoked salmon on a bagel with cream cheese. Hawkeye capers optional. I can't tell you how many private messages and emails I've received over the last few months regarding the cost and the quality of the food on offer during match days. And this is a tricky area because, again, I'm not sure how much of that Aston Villa controls directly. Like, it's highly possible that they outsource food vendors, that they're not buying and preparing and selling the food themselves, but they're letting somebody else do it. And of course, those are contracts that have terms. So if you're in the middle of that term, you're stuck in some cases. But there's no question that Chris Heck or whoever's appointed in that particular department will be carefully scrutinizing the quality, consistency, and the cost of the food because it's such a major aspect of the overall fan experience. Cleanliness is also a huge difference maker and, in my opinion, reflects the health and well-being and class of a club. The Philadelphia 76ers were a dilapidated, broken down bus at the side of the road when Chris Heck arrived, and that would change quickly. And I would imagine the same thing is going to happen at Villa Park because there's nothing worse than walking through a messy concourse or, worse still, a disgusting bathroom. I also experienced some weird rules in the hospitality suites, and I'm trying to figure out whether they are Premier League rules or club rules, because either way, they are prohibitive to revenue generation. Like, for example, pre-game, people come in and draw the blinds in the suite so that you can't actually look out onto the field or to the rest of the stadium, or presumably people can't look in and see you drinking beer, which is what I think it is. And then after the game, they lock the doors to the outside seating area, which sucked because all I wanted to do was sit out there with a beer and gaze out at this magnificent stadium that I've never seen before in my life and watch the groundskeepers do their job after the game. Like, could you imagine? That would never happen in North America, that you're not allowed to sit outside. And for what people are paying for those hospitality suites, it seems like lunacy to me that you can't just sit outside your suite and enjoy the view of the stadium. You are basically locked into a glass box. But where this club really struggles, from my experience, is in public relations and communications, two areas I'm very familiar with and ones that are going to have to dramatically increase if Aston Villa truly wants to be in and amongst the global elite. I do not consider myself anything special or more important than the next guy. But when I make an inquiry, especially if I'm willing to drop over 4,000 British pounds to come and make a visit, wouldn't it be nice to at least receive some kind of acknowledgement? And I tried with several people inside that club. Nada. I just wanted to see if there was an opportunity to have access to get some behind the scenes type stuff for this show. No. And like everybody else, when you don't acknowledge somebody who inquires, you are basically saying goodbye to at least $1,000 in revenue, whether that's future ticketing, merchandising, food and beverage, you name it. And I find it impossible to believe that this area will not drastically improve over the next 12 months. I would not be surprised if Chris Heck embraced the digital media community and actually made it easier for them to do their work at Villa Park. Because if you add up all the podcasters who are essentially, working for free, and you added all their audience and their views together, that's pretty significant, especially at a time when traditional media seems to be kind of eroding. Wouldn't it be amazing, in fact, if there was an area in Villa Park specifically for the digital media community to do their work and to file and to record and do all those things? I got the impression when I was there that the digital media people, the podcasters, are not considered legit or credible yet. And still, somehow, Arsenal Fan TV was able to have access to our pitch when the Gunners came last season. How is that possible? What was the criteria and the process there? It would be also lovely to have some different people once in a while attend Unai Emery's media briefings to ask different questions, because honestly, I hear the same people every single week asking the same kind of questions. I'm going to stop moaning now because I only had a small amount of negative impressions from my first ever trip to Aston Villa, and this is why I'm a good person to ask. That was my first time to Villa Park, so those were my first impressions. I had some fabulous interactions with some staff, however, and Janine, our in-suite host, hospitality superstar. And I'm anal about those things because I have hospitality in my blood. Anthony Richards, who works in disability and accessibility, he gave us the Villa Park tour. This guy is an elite club ambassador. You could put Anthony in virtually any job in that stadium and he would excel. And the head of North Stand Security, also elite guy. Common sense guy too. That's the difference. So there's no shortage of great staff working at the club, and it's going to be an interesting challenge for all of them under new leadership. They're going to be asked to do more. They're going to be asked to change their ways, how they think. Some of them will fancy it and excel, others won't, and they'll move on and be replaced. I have every faith in Chris Heck and his entire team to do his job correctly, generate the revenue we need to stay competitive while also changing the collective attitude at Aston Villa. And that's the hard part. Change takes time, but it's the thinking that is the biggest part of that. And when it happens, when it all comes together, I truly believe we are going to be supporting a world-class elite club that is highly regarded everywhere. And like the proverbial momentum ball that you are trying to push up the hill, there will come a point when it starts to roll on its own and we start to see more European nights. We sell more merchandise. Now we have 5 million social media followers. It all starts to happen. Until a very big game on Sunday. I get butterflies just thinking about it. As West Ham arrives at Villa Park on Sunday, be well, stay dry if you can, and as always, up the mighty Villa.